Hello YouTube. Bane666 here. I came across this post on Tumblr, and just had to make a video on it, as it is a perfect example of feminists distorting and exaggerating facts. I'm guessing in this particular case it's through sheer ignorance and stupidity, mixed with blind ideology, but who knows, maybe it was deliberate dishonesty designed to mislead. Either way, it's bullshit. So the post starts with an anonymous someone making a statement. Which is, as a guy I'm terrified. If I piss a woman off, all she has to do is falsely accuse me of rape, then my life will be ruined. I'll be labeled a sex offender and go to prison, because the judge always listens to the woman as they see her as a damsel in distress. I'm terrified. The accusations are happening more and more because of feminism. This is why we need men's rights. Then someone called, OK Creepsters, replied with, as a woman I'm terrified. If I piss a man off, he might threaten, assault, rape, beat, batter, or murder me. Then my life will be ruined. I'll be labeled a slut who wanted it and have my character dragged through the mud, either by law officers, my friends and or family, or the court of public opinion, because of rape culture. Violence against women is happening more and more because of men like you. We are literally being killed, tortured, and abused by male entitlement. This is why we need feminism. So here we have the usual feminist hyperbole. Where women are an endangered species, hunted to near extinction by violent primitive males. I'm sure you have heard all this bullshit before, I know I have, so let's move on to the next reply, which is the juicy bit I really want to sink my teeth into. It's by someone called, yeah, like the delivery service, but maybe, clueless about statistics, would be a more appropriate name. Yeah, like the delivery service, writes. If judges always listen to the woman, then why is it that 97% of rapists are not punished even when they have been convicted? And although nearly 1 in every 5 women actually does report being raped, anywhere from 54% to 90% of rapes go unreported, because women know that 94% of reported cases don't end in a conviction, they typically end in the woman being accused of being a slut, sometimes facing massive social shaming that can end in serious consequences, such as academic retaliation if you accuse the wrong boy at school, further sexual violence and even discharge from the military if you report your CO, and the ever-present fear that a man you accuse will come after you, rape you again, beat you, possibly even kill you, and if they didn't care the first time, why would they care if it happens again? Trust me, sweetheart. Your fear is completely unfounded. Men do not need activists for their rights. Men need to wake the fuck up to the privilege and rights they already have and stop acting like scared children every time the faintest whisper of a glimmer of what it must be like to be a woman threatens to become even the faintest part of their reality. Okay, let's break this down, and she also has citations, so we will have to check them out along the way. Her first claim is, if judges always listen to the woman, then why is it that 97% of rapists are not punished even when they have been convicted? So the claim here is that 97% of convicted rapists walk free without any punishment. Well, let's check out her link and see if her citation backs this claim up. It leads to RAIN, which is the Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network. The link page says, 97 of every 100 rapists receive no punishment, RAIN analysis shows. Only 3 out of every 100 rapists will ever spend even a single day in prison, according to a new analysis by RAIN, of Justice Department data. The other 97 will walk free, facing no consequences for the violent felony they have committed. Because rapists tend to be serial criminals, this leaves communities across the nation at risk of predators. You'll note that it doesn't say, 97 out of every 100 convicted rapists walk free, like the Tumblr feminist claims. And in fact RAIN's own claims contradict themselves. The proper phrasing would have been, 97 out of every 100 rapes go unpunished. Now you may think I'm nitpicking, but this is an important point, as RAIN themselves say that most rapists are serial rapists. If the average serial rapist commits an average of 5 rapes, then the actual figure would be, only 3 out of every 20 rapists will ever spend even a single day in prison. Not great, but far from 97 out of 100, or the ludicrous 97 out of every 100 convicted. I assume this would be fairly consistent with other crimes. For example, most thieves who break into your home and steal your belongings don't get caught the first time they do it. Some might do it dozens of times before being caught, and some might never be caught. So it would be easy to argue that the majority of robberies go unpunished, and that only a small percentage of thieves will ever spend a day behind bars. But Rain also gives us a link to more of their statistics, so let's go further down the rabbit hole, and have a look. Sexual assault is one of the most underreported crimes, with 60% still being left unreported. Why will only 3 out of every 100 rapists serve time? The majority of sexual assault are not reported to the police. An average of 60% of assaults in the last 5 years were not reported. Those rapists, of course, will never spend a day in prison. But even when the crime is reported, it is unlikely to lead to an arrest and prosecution. Factoring in unreported rapes, only about 3% of rapists will ever serve a day in prison. So much for the claim that 97% of rapists are not punished even when they have been convicted, because according to her own citation, the 3% conviction rate factors in a figure of 60% unreported rapes. Obviously you can't be convicted for a crime which is not reported. But where does Rain get its 60% unreported figure from? Well, luckily for us, they have a citation. Justice Department, National Crime Victimization Survey, 2008 to 2012. That's right, that 60% unreported figure comes from a survey. So the first claim, that, if judges always listen to the woman, then why is it that 97% of rapists are not punished even when they have been convicted? Gets a fail. On to the next claim. And although nearly 1 in every 5 women actually does report being raped, anywhere from 54% to 90% of rapes go unreported. So in the United States, there are around 90,000 rapes reported each year. That means that if 1 in 5 women reported being raped each year, that the female population of the United States would be around 450,000. And considering females just outnumber males in the population, that would mean that according to this feminist's figures, the entire population of the United States is less than 1 million. And that's giving her the best case scenario of 1 in 5 each year, and not 1 in 5 over a lifetime, which is what the actual figure states. But let's look at the rest of her claim. 1 in 5 is 20%, so if only 20% of rapes are reported, and 90% are unreported, that would equal 110%. Edit: I have just finished rendering this video, and it occurred to me that my maths may have been a bit out here. If 10% of rape victims is equal to 20% of the female population, which are the reported rapes, then 90% of rape victims is equal to 180% of the female population, which are the unreported rapes. Thus, according to her figures, 200% of all women have been raped. Can someone who has greater ability with maths please confirm, or correct this, as my brain now hurts? Anyway, back to the video. Which would suggest that not only every woman in the United States is raped at least once, but 1 in 10 are raped more than once. Wow, clearly the United States is the worst place to live in the entire world. Maybe all my female American viewers should move to the Democratic Republic of Congo, as it sounds safer by comparison. So far we have learned that the population of America is less than 1 million, and that 110% of women will be raped, but what about her citation? Let's have a look at that. Her link leads to an article by the New York Times. The title states, nearly 1 in 5 women in U.S. surveys say they have been sexually assaulted. You should note straight off here that the title states sexual assault, not rape, and there is a difference. Obviously both are bad, but someone groping someone's tit, or a forced kiss, shouldn't be considered the same as forced penetration. And our friend the Tumblr feminist did state, and although nearly 1 in every 5 women actually does report being raped, anywhere from 54% to 90% of rapes go unreported. She uses the word rape, when she should be using the word sexual assault. But let's continue with the article in question. An exhaustive government survey of rape and domestic violence released on Wednesday affirmed that sexual violence against women remains endemic in the United States and in some instances may be far more common than previously thought. You'll note here that her citation says that the figures are obtained from a survey, not reported rapes as claimed by our feminist friend. Next. Nearly 1 in 5 women surveyed said they had been raped or had experienced an attempted rape at some point, and 1 in 4 reported having been beaten by an intimate partner. 1 in 6 women have been stalked, according to the report. So once again let me state that sexual assault, attempted rape, and rape are all horrendous acts. But sexual assault and attempted rape is not rape. You cannot throw these 3 things together and claim that they are all rape while maintaining any credibility. Next. That almost 1 in 5 women have been raped in their lifetime is very striking and, I think, will be surprising to a lot of people, said Linda C. Degitis, director of the National Center for Injury Prevention and Control at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, which conducted the survey. So the survey in question is the National Intimate Partner and Sexual Violence Survey. And I do believe our good friend, Christina Hoff-Sommer, has already debunked this, so let's have a look at what she said.
Did the CDC find more than 1 million and nearly 14 million victims of sexual violence that professional criminologists somehow overlooked? It found them by using a poorly constructed telephone survey with a low response rate and a non-representative sample of respondents. No one interviewed was asked if they had been raped or sexually assaulted. Instead of such straightforward questions, the CDC determined whether the responses indicated sexual violation. Now, 61.5% of the women the CDC projected as rape victims in 2010 experienced what the CDC called, quote, alcohol and drug-facilitated penetration. Now, what does that mean? I mean, if a woman was unconscious or incapacitated, then every civilized person would call it rape. But what about sex while inebriated? I mean, few people would say that intoxicated sex alone constitutes rape. Indeed, a non-trivial percentage of all customary sexual intimacy, including marital sex, probably falls under that definition. In short, by using a non-representative sample and vaguely worded questions, the CDC yielded the 1 in 5 lifetime rate and the 1.3 million female rape victims per year. Now, how did the CDC come up with nearly 13 million female and male victims of sexual violence other than rape in 2010? Participants were asked if they had ever had sex because someone pressured them by telling you lies. Did you ever have sex because someone made promises about the future they knew were untrue? Or did someone ever pressure you into sex by showing you they were unhappy? Any affirmative answer to these questions counted as sexual violence. Look, to prevent rape and sexual assault, we need state-of-the-art research. We need sober estimates. False and sensational statistics are going to get in the way of effective policies. And unfortunately, when it comes to research on sexual violence, exaggeration and sensation are not the exception. They are the rule.
So our Tumblr feminist friend starts off with an already false and inflated figure, which is that 1 in 5 women in the United States will be raped in her lifetime. This of course includes both reported and unreported rapes. But our Tumblr feminist friend interprets the 1 in 5 figure as only reported, thus allowing her to falsely inflate the already falsely inflated figure. This is what happens when you start with an ideologically tainted conclusion, add hysteria, and then work backwards to interpret facts in such a distorted way as to support your predetermined conclusion. Add to this the irrational belief that you are never incorrect, and that anyone who points out mistakes or inaccuracies is just a misogynistic arsehole who is out to get you, because he has a small penis, and can't get a girlfriend, and you have just about everything I hate about feminism. So, as for her second claim that, although nearly 1 in every 5 women actually does report being raped, anywhere from 54% to 90% of rapes go unreported, I have to give her a fail. Her next claim is, because women know that 94% of reported cases don't end in a conviction. Her citation leads me to an article by the University of Surrey, titled, Between 70 to 90% rapes thought to go unreported, and 94% of reported cases don't end in a conviction. It goes on to say, fear of not being believed, not wanting to get their attacker, who is often known to them, into trouble, and a sense that they could or should have avoided the assault mean only a fraction of rape cases are being reported. Of those reported, 50 to 66% are dropped by police, and of the remaining cases that go on to be considered by the Crown Prosecution Service, 33 to 50% are discontinued. Nowhere in the article does it give a citation for these figures, so I have no idea if they are accurate or not. But let's assume for a moment that they are. Why would police drop a rape case? Well, there are a number of factors. One could be that the allegation was proven false, as with a recent case where an English woman falsely accused a man of raping her repeatedly, because she was failing her exams and was looking for an excuse. Her story was proven false when it was shown that the alleged rapist was at work, a great distance away, during the time of the alleged assaults. The FBI states that 3 to 8% of rape allegations are proven false. Please note the word proven. This obviously doesn't take into account unproven false allegations. But 3 to 8% is far short of those figures applied to us by the University of Surrey, so what about the remaining percentage? I suspect an even greater cause for cases to be dropped is a delay in the alleged victim reporting the alleged crime. If you wait days, weeks, months, or even years to report the crime, then you make it a great deal harder to prove the case. Our legal system is based on evidence, not on someone's word alone. And even if the rape is reported immediately, there may not be sufficient proof to convict. There may very well be proof of sex, but ultimately what is needed is proof of sex without consent. The rest of the article from the University of Surrey discusses women's reluctance to come forward. And to be perfectly honest, I can understand this. I've never been raped, but I imagine having to come forward and describe it to a group of strangers would be daunting, to say the least. So I can fully sympathize why someone might delay reporting it, or not report it at all. But ultimately, all that does is make it harder to get a conviction, and enables the rapist to continue raping. I would argue that feminists constantly, hysterically, exaggerating rape statistics, as we have seen by this Tumblr feminist, is what makes it harder for actual victims to come forward. The feminist constant message is, no one will believe you, and everyone will blame you. Unfortunately, if women are constantly told that there is no hope if you report a rape, and this in turn delays some women from reporting their rape, thus making it harder to prove, then what we have is a self-fulfilling prophecy, not a solution. So for this reason, combined with the University of Surrey's lack of citation and breakdown of the figures provided, I'm going to have to give the third claim a fail. Next claim. They typically end in the woman being accused of being a slut, sometimes facing massive social shaming that can end in serious consequences, such as academic retaliation if you accuse the wrong boy at school, further sexual violence, and even discharge from the military if you report your CO. To be fair, I don't doubt that there have been some cases like this, but to say that they are typical is ludicrous. Unless of course she wrote this back in 1890, then there might be an argument that this would be the typical result, but I think even that claim might be questionable. It's funny, you know, the only people I hear claiming that raped women are called sluts are feminists. Now that's not to say that there aren't some trolls or Neanderthals out there who either actually believe this, or just say it for the reaction, but that doesn't mean that all of, or most of, society thinks this way. But to be fair, she does provide us with 2 citations, so I should check them out before moving on to the next claim. The first is from Huffington Post, and is titled, Hanover College told rape victim that attempting to have her alleged rapist punished is harassment. Now the first thing I would like to point out before getting to the actual article, is that the title refers to the alleged rapist, as the alleged rapist, so far so good, but it also refers to the alleged victim as a rape victim. As we are about to see, this case has not been proven in a court of law, so neither party can be said to be either guilty or the victim. This whole case is built on, as of yet, unproven allegations. But let's read on. A female student at Hanover College in Indiana is accusing the school of retaliating against her for reporting that she was raped, harassed and physically abused by a former boyfriend. In response to a complaint filed by the female student, named Samantha, the U.S. Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights informed the small liberal arts college last week that it is under investigation. Samantha, who requested the Huffington Post only identify her by her first name, claims she faced possible expulsion for reporting sexual assault and harassment. Over a 2-year period, Hanover instructed Samantha to take her case to the police and even attempted to prevent her from living on campus, according to correspondence between Hanover and the student. Samantha says the school, which is affiliated with the Presbyterian Church, also failed to stop the former boyfriend and his new girlfriend from harassing her. Under the federal gender equity law Title IX, colleges are obligated to prevent and intervene to stop harassment that has been brought to their attention. The OCR initially worked with Samantha, her attorney and the college to reach a mediation agreement in the summer of 2013, allowing for Samantha to file a harassment complaint against her alleged assailant and his girlfriend. But the college then decided in November 2013 that the former boyfriend and his girlfriend were not responsible for harassment, and allowed them to file their own harassment complaint against Samantha. The Hanover Student Misconduct Board decided that Samantha's attempts to have the male student punished for the alleged offenses, whether through campus security, the campus conduct review process, his fraternity, the court system, or the Department of Education, do appear to be a type of harassment, according to a notice obtained by HuffPost. However, the college couldn't punish Samantha, the board said, because that kind of harassment isn't covered by the school code of conduct. The OCR decided to investigate whether allowing a harassment claim from the accused rapist against Samantha constituted retaliation against a sexual assault victim, and further, whether the college failed to stop the harassment against her that had already been reported. Frank Lamonti, the executive director of the Student Press Law Center, has reviewed Samantha's case and spoken with her. He said Hanover should have had a mechanism in place to deny student complaints that the school believes don't have merit. Even though they didn't end up imposing disciplinary actions, just sending a letter condemning her for speaking out is intimidating enough, Lamonti said. Certainly if word gets around that the college regards telling people that there's a sexual predator on campus as harassment, then people are going to be intimidated into staying silent. Okay, so let's be totally fair and unbiased here. There are two likely scenarios here. The first, that HuffPost hints at in its title, is that Samantha is a legitimate victim. She was in fact raped, abused and harassed, as she claims, by her ex and his new girlfriend, and the school, either through lack of evidence, incompetence, or corruption, failed to protect her. The second possibility is that Samantha is using false allegations of rape, abuse and harassment, to get revenge on her ex-boyfriend, and his new girlfriend. The article doesn't give us enough information to conclude which of these two scenarios is factual. But the fact that the university found her guilty of harassment, and the fact that she has been banned from living on campus, has me leaning towards the second scenario. But to be fair, it's impossible to tell based on the information provided, and either explanation is plausible. For this article to be proof that reporting a rape will lead to academic retaliation if you accuse the wrong boy at school, you would have to start with a preproposition that women never lie, and that all allegations made by females are always 100% factual. And even if Samantha is telling the truth, it's only a single case. To say that a single case proves a systemic problem would mean that the case I presented earlier, of a woman falsely accusing a man of rape because she was failing her exams, would be proof that all rape allegations are therefore false, which would be a ludicrous claim. At best this article shows a single case, at worst it shows a female using false allegations to destroy an ex-boyfriend's life. And wasn't that the original claim made by Anonymous at the start of this video? Next. So her next citation is from Reuters, and is titled, 8 Women Allege Rape, Retaliation in U.S. Military. Now as most of you know, I'm an Australian, so I would think it's pretty evident that I have never served in the United States military. So I have no idea if there is, or is not, a rape culture within the United States military. I accept the possibility that there might be, and I should probably add this topic to my list of future videos. but it's too big a topic to go into depth here, and would require a lot of research before I came to a conclusion. So with this one, I have to give the Tumblr feminist a maybe, but even if there's a systemic rape culture within the military, and that's giving our Tumblr feminist friend the courtesy of the best possible outcome for her claim, it doesn't prove that rape culture is systemic throughout the rest of society. So for her claim that they typically end in the woman being accused of being a slut, sometimes facing massive social shaming that can end in serious consequences, such as academic retaliation if you accuse the wrong boy at school, further sexual violence and even discharge from the military if you report your CO. I have to give her a fail. Her next claim is, in the ever-present fear that a man you accuse will come after you, rape you again, beat you, possibly even kill you, and if they didn't care the first time, why would they care if it happens again? Is it possible for a person accused of rape to threaten, beat, or kill their accuser? Of course, but how is that any different than any other crime? If someone physically assaults me and robs me, and I report it to the police, there is always a chance they will take it out on me, or possibly kill me. So should no one ever report any crimes, based on the possibility of reprisals? Ludicrous. If society operated this way in the majority of criminal cases, there would be empty jails and courtrooms across the country. And of course she backs up this claim with, if they didn't care the first time, why would they care if it happens again? This of course is just more feminist ideological bullshit. More of the feminist victim cult, claiming to be the eternal victims of everything. Of course doing so requires the distortion and exaggeration of reality, as we have seen in this video. No citations, so let's move on. Oh, and by the way, this claim gets a fail. The next claim is, trust me, sweetheart. Your fear is completely unfounded. This is of course referring to the fear of being falsely accused, expressed by Anonymous at the start of this video. So our Tumblr feminist friend has given us a link to back up her condescending comment, so let's check it out. The article is by Slate, called, "This Rape Infographic is Going Viral. Too bad it's wrong." It states, yesterday, under the headline, "The Saddest Graph You'll See Today," Dylan Matthews at the Washington Post published this infographic created by the Enliven Project to put the legal issues around rape, its prosecutions, and concerns about false accusations into perspective. The graphic quickly made the rounds on Twitter and Facebook, but unfortunately, while well-intentioned, it is also misleading in significant ways that can be used to undercut its basic message, which is sound, that false rape accusations are rare. I actually remember this thing being passed around Facebook a couple of years back. So let's have a look at it and discuss why it's wrong. Firstly, as I discussed earlier with Rain's stats, it assumes that each rapist rapes once, when in reality serial rapists rape numerous times. So even though this graphic may represent 1,000 acts of rape, including false allegations, it does not represent 1,000 rapists. As I said earlier, criminals will often commit a crime numerous times before being caught. So if you were to do a similar chart for something like pickpocketing, I would suggest that the number of convictions per 1,000 acts of pickpocketing would be low. Yet if you looked at the number of pickpockets arrested and convicted over time, you would find the number out of 1,000 to be high. There is a difference in the number of acts committed by an actor, and the number of actors committing such acts. This chart presents the number of acts committed by actors, as the number of actors committing such acts, thus presenting skewed figures that inflate the number of rapists roaming free. But back to the article. The persistent myth that false accusations are common makes it incredibly difficult for victims to get justice. The overwhelming threat of being accused of making it all up to cover up for one's slutty ways, see recently, Steubenville, Notre Dame, Cleveland, is enough to make women simply not report. Those who do report run a very high chance of never seeing a conviction, some because police drop the case on the slut and liar grounds and some because juries by the defense attorneys claim that the victim bizarrely preferred being publicly accused of being a slut and liar to quietly forgetting about a night of forced sex. Wow, so this article doesn't sound biased at all. Let's continue. Sadly, the graphic meant to set the record straight on false accusations only confuses matters. 3 major problems jump out. The graphic assumes 1 rape per rapist. Looking at the above picture, one might start to get the impression that every other man you meet is a rapist. Nearly 1 in 5 women have been raped, according to the latest substantive government numbers, and infographics like this might make people conclude therefore that 1 in 5 men is a rapist. In reality, a much smaller, though still troubling number, an estimated 6% of men, are rapists. Your average rapist stacks up 6 victims. That's hard to capture in an infographic, but could be clearer by just labeling the little dudes rapes instead of rapists. After all, the fact that most rapists are repeat offenders drives home how troubling it is that victims can't find justice. If more rapists saw a jail cell the first time they raped someone, the number of victims would decline dramatically. Which is basically what I stated. Next. The graphic overestimates the number of unreported rapes. It's hard to measure how many rapes go unreported, because, unreported. Making it even harder to get an accurate count, a lot of rape victims don't identify as rape victims, because it's so stigmatized. Still, improved public education has made it easier for rape victims to report. RAIN, the Rape, Abuse and Incest National Network, using government numbers, estimates that 54% of rapes go unreported. Tweaking the infographic to reflect this more conservative number wouldn't make the image less convincing, but it would make it more accurate. The graphic overestimates the number of false accusations. This infographic is intended to drive home how rare false accusations are, and yet, because of a simple error, it overestimates how many actually occur. The problem is that the Enliven project conflates false reports, which only require the claim that a crime has happened, with false accusations, which require fingering a supposed perpetrator. This might seem like a small thing, but this report from the National Center for the Prosecution of Violence Against Women, which focuses in part on teaching law enforcement to understand and root out false reports of rape, is very careful to warn against conflating the two. In its list of potential indicators of a false report, the center specifically singles out the lack of a named perpetrator as something to look out for. To summarize material developed by McDowell and Hibbler 1987, realistic indicators of a false report could potentially include a perpetrator who is either a stranger or a vaguely described acquaintance who is not identified by name. As previously discussed, most sexual assault perpetrators are actually known to their victims. Identifying the suspect is therefore not typically a problem. However, victims who fabricate a sexual assault report may not want anyone to actually be arrested for the fictional crime. Therefore, they may say that they were sexually assaulted by a stranger or an acquaintance who is only vaguely described and not identified by name. Emphasis mine. According to the document, 2 to 8% of reported rapes are false, but the number that are false accusations is smaller. Women who make false reports want sympathy, and as victims of real rapes can tell you, accusing a real man usually gets you very little. You know, this is an interesting point, and probably one I haven't given enough consideration in the past. There is a difference between a false report and a false accusation. But if this is the case, then might this not account for the large number of rapes that don't go to trial? Think about it, if a woman makes a false report, the police are hardly going to find a guy who doesn't exist, and put him on trial. Now I know the article quotes only 2 to 8%, but that's proven cases. How many cases are unproven, and are just chalked up to being unsolved? To be honest though, I think there would be more motive for someone to make a false claim, than make a false report. Revenge, attention-seeking, mental illness, the list of why someone might do this is a long one. To be honest, I'm not in the camp that believes that the rate of false accusations, or false reports, is exceptionally high. I honestly think it's impossible to know one way or the other, but I do think the number is growing, as society, or should I say feminists, has made it easier for false allegations to be accepted as fact without the burden of proof. It's a simple equation really. If you have a high, but fair, burden of proof, then the rate of false allegations will also be low. But if you lower the burden of proof, you will inversely increase the number of false allegations. I believe in justice for rape victims, but this shouldn't mean giving free rein to the vengeful, the mentally ill, or attention seekers, to abuse the legal system for their own twisted ends. So I'm sorry, Tumblr feminist, although rape undoubtedly is a problem, false allegations are a problem too. Both should be addressed. So your comment gets a fail. And her final claim is, men do not need activists for their rights. Men need to wake the fuck up to the privilege and rights they already have and stop acting like scared children every time the faintest whisper of a glimmer of what it must be like to be a woman threatens to become even the faintest part of their reality. Wow, someone's been drinking the poison Kool-Aid. So here we have the same feminist ideological bullshit. Only men are privileged. Only females have issues. Blah blah, fucking blah. Of course all the issues she actually brings up are exaggerated beyond belief. They are magnified to the degree, that if true, women shouldn't leave their homes without an armed escort. But hold on, I'm sure their homes aren't safe either, right? I mean, in her nightmare world there would have to be at least 5 guys hiding under her bed, waiting to violate her. Right? All this bullshit reminds me of the satanic panic of the 80s. Where ideological lunatics believed that Dungeons & Dragons players were having satanic masses in secret underground catacombs, and were sacrificing babies by the truckload. Law enforcement across America even took many of these lunatics seriously. It would seem, not a lot has changed. Sad really. Anyway, that's it for now folks, and always remember, don't drink the poison Kool-Aid.
Our subject is Irving Polling, who went by the nickname Bink, a 16-year-old high school student in Richmond, Virginia. On June 9, 1982, Bink committed suicide. He shot himself in the chest with his mother's gun. Bink's mother, Patricia, believed that the cause of her son's suicide was his involvement with the role-playing game Dungeons & Dragons. For some time before his death, Bink had been involved with a D&D game that was provided at his high school as an extracurricular activity. Patricia Polling was certain enough that the game had caused Bink's suicide that she launched an unsuccessful lawsuit against the school principal as well as the publisher of the game, TSR. So do we think that playing a particular game could drive a person to suicide? That's a hard sell. You took my queen, that does it. Goodbye, cruel world. Okay, there has to be more to it than that. And Patricia Polling added the element to Dungeons & Dragons that was the real culprit behind the game, Satanism. After her lawsuits were thrown out, Polling became a crusader against role-playing games and a self-proclaimed expert on the dangers of the occult. She formed an organization called BAD. It's an acronym for Bothered About Dungeons and Dragons. The organization led to Polling becoming a private investigator specializing in occult crime. She spoke before law enforcement agencies and appeared on numerous nationally syndicated radio and television programs. There is no doubt that Jack Chick's Dark Dungeon tract was based on Patricia Polling's anti-D&D propaganda. The basic idea is that playing Dungeons & Dragons leads to involvement with the occult, that the game was designed to entice its players into satanic worship and ritual, and that occult practices lead to crime, violence, and sometimes suicide. Patricia Polling had some basic ideas that were already circulating in the mid-1980s that laid the groundwork for her crusade against Dungeons & Dragons. There were widespread rumors of an underground satanic network of cults, and the main purpose of these cults were to lure teenagers into the occult and eventually Satanism. How much truth was there to Polling's claims? To get an idea, we can look at a rare item that has been provided for us on a website called The Escapist. The author of this site managed to procure a booklet written by Patricia Pulling for the purpose of distribution to educators, librarians, pastors, police, and parents, as it says on the cover.